It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Global Climate Talk 2024 Navigating the Future Together. My presentation will be on rising tides and resilient farming amid climate shifts, adapting coastal agriculture in Bangladesh. Climate change is not a myth anymore. It has already started its impacts on livelihoods and agriculture. Currently, around 1,000 schools at Amazon rainforest closed now because of extreme drought in that region. And yesterday, COP29 conference started in Azerbaijan to discuss different issues on climate change and saving the future. Coastal Bangladesh faces severe inundation risk from rising sea level, and in the coming future, this risk will be worsened. Increased soil salinity and water contamination with the saline water, extreme climatic events like severe drought, coastal flooding, interannual climatic variations, and reduced agricultural productivity are the main impacts from climate change and sea level rise in Bangladesh. People's weakness in perceiving climate change is a challenge because we cannot understand the climate change without any instrument. Changes in temperature, for example, 1 degree centigrade change over 30 years time span is really difficult for a human being to realize. Therefore, when we ask questions, the people, how do you perceive climate change? Do you feel any changes in temperature over the past 30 years or something? They can't answer clearly because it's beyond our capacity to detect these changes. Also, when we ask these questions in winter, they will respond in a way that the colder temperature increased, or the coldness has increased, or if we ask these questions in the summer, they may answer that warmness has increased. So the unbiased answer is really difficult to be obtained from the farmers. Our objectives were to assess the climate change impacts on coastal agriculture and evaluate the farmers' perceptions and adaptation strategies to tackle these climatic impacts and provide an assessment of future sea level rise in the bay coastal belts along Bangladesh and its potential effects on agriculture. And we wanted to recommend some policy and extension support measures and that are necessary to cope with these climatic events. We combined different the research methodologies. We downloaded global 28 global climate model data and then downscaled and bias corrected them to predict the future sea level rise. We employed household surveys and focus group discussions to complement the scientific findings or to understand the consistency of meteorological data and farmers' perceptions, and also to know the climatic effects on the agricultural activities. These mixed effects, we used different econometric methods like regression and mixed effects models, and also machine learning algorithms for classifying the farmers in different categories based on their perceptions. For example, random forest classification technique. We found that compared to the 96 2005 average. By the end of the 21st century, we may have 1.7 to 4.4 degrees centigrade temperature increase. As a response, sea level can increase between 0.77 and 1.15 meter depending on the representative concentration pathways. If this happens, 2098 square kilometer of the coastal area will be inundated. That will affect agriculture, and this flooding will be more in the southwestern part of Bangladesh because of the damaged river embankments around the polders. Socioeconomic characteristics of the farmer affected their perception as seen in this figure, and farmer perceived that temperature has increased and variable rainfall pattern in the coastal areas, and their perception was consistent across the coastal belts of Bangladesh, starting from Satkhira and ending at the Teknaf. The farmers in the southern Bangladesh, the farmers in the coastal belts of Bangladesh, Satkhira, Khulna, Bagirhat, Borgona, Patuakhali, Noakhali, Chittagong, and Cox's Bazar, they perceived that summers have been warmer and the winters been colder. Soil salinity and water contamination are the significant concerns. Coastal regions, this blue line represents the coastal area's production, and the dark brown color represents inland production. Agricultural production during the 1970s was almost similar in the coastal areas and in the inland, but later on we see the inland production increased more rapidly than the coastal areas, and each of the climatic extreme events like cyclone and flood affected more in the coastal areas compared to the inland areas of Bangladesh. Due to the climate change, long-term increase in temperature affected 0.75 to 0.91% of crop yield. Not only these climate trends, but also the climate variability, interannual variability also affected crops, and their production is affected by 8.55%. Mixed model econometric analysis using mixed effects model revealed that 84.47% yield variation can be explained by the crop's location and their types. 12% are influenced by climate change. So we can see that not only climate change but also variability affected crop yields in the coastal and in the inland areas, and the effects were more in the coastal area than the inland areas. Farmers are naturally adapting. Whether you advise or not, they try to adapt to the changing situation. Currently, they are practicing climate smart agriculture to tackle the climate change. Such practices include saline tolerant crops, floating beds, vegetable cultivation in floating beds, and rainwater harvesting. They adopt climate smart agriculture practices, we have seen that farmers with higher adoption rate of climate smart agricultural practices had improved food security. So this series of research activities found that sea level rise and climate variability significantly impact coastal agriculture, and farmers' perceptions were largely aligned with the meteorological data. So this will help us to make the farmers understand the climatic effects and to motivate them to adopt climate smart agricultural practices. Adoption of climate smart agricultural practices are critical for mitigating the climatic impacts, and extension services are essential for improving the farmer awareness and adaptation. Therefore, policymakers must consider sea level rise, preparedness, and adaptations. What does it mean? It means that the embankments, particularly the damaged embankments around the folders, should be monitored and repaired on a regular basis so that the saline seawater cannot enter into the polder. Saline water can damage the crop. Saline water can damage the standing crops, also degrade the soil that might take more than 15 years to be reclamation can take more than 15 years. Also, currently, the repair activities are not frequent in the coastal areas. Repairment of a single damaged area can take up to 5 years. Extension agents should work on increasing the farmer participation in climate field schools, and climate smart agricultural practices should be disseminated in the areas where the adoption rate is low. Different socioeconomic factors influence the adoption differently in different areas. So the extension agents should focus on this area. Localized recommendations are important for effective results. These are the research publications related to this presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Any comments, feedback, or questions are welcome. Thank you.